Hey, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. This is like the TV, you know, where, hey, Mom, look at me. I'm on the YouTubes. I got a car studio. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. God be praised for motherhood, and may God prevent this demonic assault on all moms. Boy, mom's got it tough. You got the high, you know, one of the tricks that I wasn't going to talk about Mother's Day, but one of the tricks of the devil is to turn our glory into our shame. Remember Psalm 4? How long will you turn your glory into shame? That's a demonic thing. So, you know, we have these things that we glory in, like the gift of baptism. I'm baptized. I belong to Jesus. This is glorious. And yet the devil wants us to be ashamed. Or what? I'm a Christian. Jesus is my brother and my friend. My sins are forgiven. That's our glory. And the devil wants to turn it to shame. Well, the same thing too is, I'm pregnant. I'm a mom. I mean, I'm not, by the way. But that's the idea. You get the idea. The devil wants to turn that glory into shame. How long? There's a way that we fight back against the devil by just embracing those good things that God gives to us and saying, I'm proud of these things. Not that we've like earned it or deserved it, but that we're given. I'm a Christian. And I'm a mom. I mean, again, I'm not a mom. I just don't want to be confused here. You know, that's. But if you are a mom, I'm a mom. Ha! Devil, look at this. It's a good gift. I got kids. I got babies hanging around. We should rejoice in these things because they're good. Anyway, happy Mother's Day, Mom. The thing we want to talk about today, I was still thinking about this all week. I tried to dig at it in the sermon too, and it's hard. Okay, here's the background. So in John 16, there's this big little while passage. Jesus says, a little while you'll see me, a little while you won't see me, a little while you will see me. And the disciples are like, what is he talking about, a little while? But they don't say anything. And Jesus says, are you wondering what I'm talking about, a little while? Sort of. And then Jesus says, a little while you'll see me, and you will be sad, and the world will rejoice. You will sorrow, but your sorrow will turn to joy. And that little while that he's talking about is the little while of the tomb, the little while that he's in the grave. That's what he's saying. But there's that little phrase in there that says, the world will rejoice. The world will rejoice when they see Jesus being mocked. And the world will rejoice when they see Jesus being beaten and flogged. And the world will rejoice when they see Jesus dying, suffering and dying, nailed to the cross, and raised from the dead. And we got to just think, why? Why does the world rejoice at such cruelty and barbarism and everything? It doesn't have to. You would think that the world could just be like indifferent. Or even sad, like there could be some sympathy from the world, like, oh man, how come that poor guy's being beat up like that? He doesn't look like he did anything wrong. That's not the case. The world is joyful at the defeat, at the seeming defeat of Jesus. Now, why is this? The answer, my friends, you YouTube theologian, it goes, I mean, the answer has to do with everything. The answer is that there's this fundamental divide that runs all the way through history, and it runs through humanity, and it runs through everything. And Jesus is on one side, and the world is on the other. I'm trying to make a video here, guys. And these two sides are at war with each other, and the sides have to do with justification. Man, oh man, I was reading through Luther's introduction to the book of Galatians from his 1535, the Greater Galatians commentary. I gotta get that blog up this week. Look at wolfmueller.co this week for the blog, and I'll try to get that up there. It's really great. Pastor Mealis and I were digging around a couple of passages in there where Luther talks about the doctrine of justification being on which, and Luther is right onto this, that there are two, that there are these, you have two options. You have the justification from Jesus, or you have the justification of yourself, of works, of your own righteousness, and that's it. Those are the two ways to live. And if you're on the being justified by your own works and by your own actions, you can't stand Jesus. Well, okay, so let's take another step back. And we want to remember that one of the fundamental questions that we have to answer in life is this: what is a human being? Like, what am I? You know, the philosophers say that we're rational animals. That's how Aristotle loves to teach the philosophers to say that, and I suppose that's useful in some ways. We got the rational part of us and the animal part of us, and this guy, he keeps driving by me. He's like doing laps. And that guy just hit the curb. What's going on around here today? I better get out of the way. That guy looks like he's hit about everything. There's hardly anything left on his car. I can't roll up the window because the air conditioner doesn't work. This car is perfect for Texas. Anyhow, what were we talking about? Justification? You guys try to stay focused. The philosophers say that we are a rational animal, but that simply doesn't hold up to really the scrutiny of history. But it's better than what the world says about us now. I think that the anthropology, that's what we're talking about, our doctrine of humanity, the anthropology of the world today is that we're consumed consumers. That's my shorthand. I don't know. There's got to be someone who's smarter than me who's come up with a name for this. But it's like we're defined by our consumerism externally. We're always being marketed to and sold something, and we're supposed to define ourselves by the stuff that we buy, by the stuff we wear, stuff we eat, the cars, the people, the house, all this stuff. We're consumers, and then we're consumed. You know, there's this kind of victim, this identity politics, or like I'm defined by my victimhood. Who's consumed me, who's wounded me, who's hurt me, or something like this. And it's a political divide. You know, the political right leans towards the consumerism, the political left leans towards the identity politics, but that both of this is how the world wants me to think of myself. It's not helpful. We can do so much better, but and this is the mind-blowing thing. Luther writes this series of theses, anthropological theses on the doctrine of man, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's kind of stunningly wonderful. He says, man is justified by faith. This is like who we are is justification. Now that means at least, just like on the surface level, that means at least that we're always going about trying to be justified, trying to be righteous. We want to be right. We want to be righteous, but then we have by whose standard and in whose eyes? Who am I trying to be righteous for? Am I trying to be understood by righteous by like the YouTubes? And so I'm presenting myself. I'm like this is the temptation, right? That every video I'm making a case for my own righteousness. So now that you should watch the video or something like that. And by what standard? By whose standard? Or am I trying to be righteous by the world standard, by the standard of tolerance, by the standard of ecology, by the standard of the nice guy stuff? Or so I want my peers to, I mean, this is one of the things of social media is now I stand in the courtroom of social media, and every post and every picture and every selfie and everything, I'm making the case for my own righteousness to be judged by the court of my peers, and the judgment comes, the jury is the likes or the comments or whatever that I get. You see now, but this is expanded through everything, so that you and me and every person around here is trying to be judged righteous. They might not know it. They might not know even what they've just, you've absorbed a standard of righteousness that's different than God's righteousness, just the cultural righteousness, and it's your peers or it's your family or it's your parents, or, this is one of the things is when you have your parents and now you want to be judged righteous by your parents, especially dads. You got to look out for this, because you've set the children to be pursuing a righteousness that you now stand as judge, and the righteousness that they're achieving is declared by their father. Now, this is, if it's not God's righteousness, we're in a tough spot. So that every single person, this is the thing that we want to say. Every single person is in the act of justification, of justifying and being justified. And the supreme divide is going to be, will I be justified by myself, or will I be justified by Jesus? That's it. That is the question of the universe, the question of culture, the question of this life. And we're born by nature wanting to justify ourselves. I mean, we're born by nature wanting to declare and establish our own righteousness. So that most people are living life this way to establish their own righteousness. Now, here I think is the supreme example, and it's the example in our culture of tolerance. What's going on with tolerance is people are saying, are you going to join in my own self-deluded game of justifying myself or not? Are you gonna be tolerant? In other words, are you gonna sit there and let me continue to make the case for my own righteousness, or are you gonna come in with some sort of idea of sin or transgression and destroy my fun? That's the game that they're playing. And if we refuse to play that game, we are of all men most to be hated. If we refuse to come along and say, yeah, it's fine for you to sin how you want to sin and still be considered righteous, to live how you want to live and still be considered holy, when we come and we say, no, that's just not the case. The one who invented the rules, God, and wrote them down in rocks, doesn't change his mind about things. So that, and on purpose, the Lord's way of justification is built to destroy all attempts to be righteous in ourselves. The Lord is like a heat-seeking missile for the bluster of our own pride. And so every attempt at building up our own righteousness, our own holiness, the edifice of the worship of ourselves and exalting our own name is the Lord is going to demolish. This is Tower of Babel kind of stuff. And so the Lord is always on the lookout for these little mini towers of Babel, which we're always trying to build. And he's going to knock them down. That's what he does. He knocks down towers of Babels. So here we are, trying to build the case for our own righteousness, for our own eternal life, for our own goodness and everything else like this. Here we are trying to build our own little kingdoms, and the Lord is knocking it down. And so of course we have to stand against the Lord and fight against him with everything we have. And when the Lord shows up to do the work of justification, to justify sinners by his blood and his death, not by our own righteousness, when he shows up, we got to kill him. Anything to silence the preaching of law and gospel. Anything to end this assault of God on our own self-righteousness. That guy's riding a golf cart on the street. Man, the warm weather brings out all sorts of crazy stuff. So those who are justified by them, who justify themselves, are at war against those who are justified by Christ. Luther, remember Martin Luther? He says that's what was happening with Cain and Abel. It was a war of justification. Those who are justified by themselves have to kill those who are justified by Christ. Paul says that was what was going on with Isaac and Ishmael. The child of the law was fighting against the child of the promise, and it continues today that the world is at war with those who are justified by Christ. Now, how do we who are justified by Christ, we're not called to arms to fight back. This is what it means to be justified, is you get killed by the world, or shamed, or mocked, or whatever. Demonetized, or, who knows what kind of, all the different little forms that the devil likes to bring to us. You guys have a list of your own in your own life. This devil turning our glory into our shame. And this is why Jesus says, a little while, and you will be sorry, and the world will rejoice. The self-justifying world rejoices at the silence of Jesus. The self-justifying world rejoices at the death of the Son of God. The self-justifying world loves it for God to be in the tomb. It's the best thing ever. Because it doesn't interrupt my program. My own case that I'm building for my own righteousness. It doesn't get in the way. It doesn't trouble it. It doesn't challenge it. It lets it stand. But this little tower of self-justification Babel will fall one day or another, and that's important for us to know. I mean, it either falls in this life or it falls in death. Because the illusion of our own righteousness cannot stand on the day of judgment. So it's better that tower falls now in repentance than then in condemnation. So, here's the crucial question that divides the world. Are you glad that Jesus is dead, or are you glad that Jesus is raised? Are you happy or sad that Jesus is coming back? Have you set yourself to the native business of your flesh, which is to justify yourself, to make the case of your own goodness? Or have you seen that there's no hope in that way of life, and said, no, Jesus, you are my righteousness and my peace and my hope? This is, by the way, true life. It's to know the righteousness of Christ, and to know that His perfection is given to us by faith, and that by His suffering we come to life eternal. That's good. That's really good. Sunday Drive.